Carlos Baleba.
Manchester United have spent years trying to solve the same problem. How do you give Bruno Fernandes the freedom to create without leaving the midfield exposed? How do you get the best out of Kobbie Mainoo? And how do you finally build a midfield that can dominate games instead of constantly reacting to them? Well, Manchester United may have just found the missing piece. Carlos Baleba, a powerful, aggressive, press-resistant midfielder who could completely change the balance of Michael Carrick's team. And if you enjoy tactical football stories that go beyond the headlines, subscribe to the Ballers Zone, because today we're going to break down exactly why Carlos Baleba could transform Manchester United's midfield. Because this isn't simply about signing another midfielder. It's about changing what the players around him are capable of doing. Think about Bruno Fernandes. Manchester United's captain is at his best when he's allowed to operate higher up the pitch. He wants to receive between the lines. He wants to attempt the difficult pass. He wants to arrive around the penalty area. He wants freedom, but freedom has a price. When Bruno moves forward, somebody has to protect the space behind him, and that's where Baleba becomes so interesting. At Brighton, Baleba has developed into a midfielder capable of defending large spaces, recovering possession, and competing aggressively in the middle of the pitch. Tactical analysis of his 2025-26 role highlights his work in a deeper double pivot position where he was asked to protect the back line and defend transitions. That could be exactly what United need. Because imagine this midfield, Baleba behind, Mainoo alongside him, Bruno ahead of them. Suddenly the roles become much clearer. Baleba gives you physicality, Mainoo gives you composure, Bruno gives you creativity, and together, that could be terrifying. Let's start with Baleba. The first thing you notice is his physical presence, but that's not what makes him special. It's what he does with that physicality. He can carry the ball through pressure, he can win possession, he can cover ground, and perhaps most importantly, he can recover after Manchester United lose the ball. That's huge, because Carrick's football appears to demand a team that wants to control games and press collectively. But aggressive possession football comes with a risk. If you lose the ball with players ahead of it, the space behind them becomes vulnerable. You need someone who can immediately attack that space. Baleba can potentially become that player. Now add Kobbie Mainoo. This is where things become really interesting. Mainoo doesn't need to be the player constantly chasing the ball. He is at his best when he can receive it, turn, carry it, and connect midfield with attack. But imagine Mainoo playing next to Baleba instead of being responsible for covering every transition himself. Suddenly, he has more freedom. Baleba can drop, Mainoo can move. Bruno can push higher, and the entire midfield becomes more fluid, instead of three midfielders all trying to solve the same problem. They solve different problems. That's what good midfield structures do. And then there's Bruno. This is where the signing could become genuinely scary. Because Bruno's greatest weapon is unpredictability. He can create something from almost nothing. But when a player like Bruno has to constantly worry about what's happening behind him, some of that freedom disappears. Baleba could change that. Imagine Bruno receiving the ball 30 yards from goal. Mainoo is available underneath him. Baleba is behind them. The defenders have to decide whether to step forward. If they do, Bruno can find the space behind them. If they stay back, Bruno has time. And if United lose possession, Baleba is already there. That means Bruno can take risks, and Bruno taking risks is exactly what Manchester United want. But Baleba offers something else. Transition. This could become one of the biggest changes to United's football. Manchester United have often looked vulnerable immediately after losing possession. The team attacks, the ball is lost. Suddenly, the midfield is stretched. The opposition runs directly at the defense. Baleba gives Carrick another player capable of attacking those moments. His defensive numbers show the scale of his involvement in recovering possession. One analysis recorded him among the Premier League's leaders for middle third possession wins and aggressive recoveries. So imagine United losing the ball high up the pitch. Instead of immediately retreating, Baleba steps forward. Mainoo closes another passing lane. Bruno presses the nearest player. Suddenly, the opposition doesn't have time to counter. United win it back, and the attack starts again. That's how you turn possession into pressure. And there's another reason this transfer is so interesting. Age. Baleba is only 22. Mainoo is still young, so as much of the emerging United squad. That means Carrick wouldn't simply be building a midfield for one season. He could potentially be building the foundation of Manchester United's midfield for years. Baleba isn't coming in as a finished product. There are still areas he needs to improve. His passing consistency can develop. His decision-making can become sharper. And playing for Manchester United brings an entirely different level of pressure. But that's exactly why the tactical fit matters. He doesn't need to become Rodri. He doesn't need to become Casemiro. He needs to become Baleba inside Carrick's system, and this is where we need to control the hype. Manchester United are not suddenly unstoppable because they sign one midfielder. Football doesn't work like that. The defense still needs to function. The attackers still need to finish chances. The team still needs chemistry, and Baleba himself will need time to adapt. But what this signing could do is solve a structural problem. It could allow Bruno to become more dangerous. It could allow Mainoo to become more influential. It could make United harder to counter. And it could give Carrick the freedom to build a more aggressive possession system. That's much more important than one player's statistics, because the best transfers don't just improve one position, they improve the players around them. And that's exactly why Carlos Baleba could be so important. Imagine Manchester United in a big Premier League match. Bruno is between the lines, Mainoo receives the ball and turns, Baleba is behind them controlling the space. The fullbacks push forward, the wingers move inside, the opposition drops deeper, United circulate the ball, then suddenly Bruno receives it. One pass, one movement, one finish, and if the attack breaks down, Baleba is there. The counterattack dies before it starts, United recover possession, and they go again, and again. That is what makes this midfield potentially frightening. Not just creativity, not just physicality, but control. And perhaps that is the biggest reason Manchester United have been pursuing Baleba. They don't simply need another midfielder. They need someone who changes the mathematics of the team. Someone who allows Bruno to attack, someone who gives Mainoo freedom, someone who protects the defense, someone who can win the ball and carry it forward, someone who can survive pressure. Baleba has already shown many of those qualities at Brighton. Now comes the much bigger question. Can he do it at Old Trafford? The most exciting part may not be what Baleba does himself. It could be what Bruno and Mainoo are finally allowed to do because he's there. Because sometimes the most important signing isn't the player who scores the goals. It's the player who makes everyone else better. And Carlos Baleba could be exactly that player. Because if Baleba, Mainoo, and Bruno really click, Manchester United might finally have a midfield that doesn't just play football. If you want more tactical breakdowns and football stories like this, subscribe to the Ballers Zone.